What can I say? Nothing sends me like a good meme and a good duochrome flip. Hey guys, it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a part 2, kind of like a recreation slash updated version of one of my favorite videos I did last year, which was going through my entire collection and sharing with you guys my favorite individual eyeshadow shades. Pretty much all the palettes I have in my collection I do love. There are a few palettes with like certain shades in them where that one shade is just my favorite thing. So basically last year I thought it would be a fun time to like go through all my palettes and share with you guys my favorite shades within my entire collection. And especially since I've added so many new palettes to my collection and just found some new favorites, I wanted to do an updated version because who doesn't want to just stare at some really glittery swatches on an arm? So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this one. Full details of this very, very red makeup look should already be on Instagram. I will mention what I'm wearing on my eyes later in the video. And I think that's it. Let's just get really excited about some colorful powder, because that's what eyeshadow is. I've tried to separate these into kind of like loose categories of things, but first I wanted to start with quite possibly my favorite category of eyeshadows, which are beautiful glittery top coat type things. I've gotten really addicted to like very glittery, very fun lid shades and top coats and glittery duochrome type things, and what can I say? This is my passion. Probably my favorite shade that I own in my collection is the ColourPop Super Shock Shadow in the shade Ritz. As you can see, it picks up the light really, really well. I have a ring light just shining on me right now, and it's just picking up that light and reflecting it. This is like magic on the eyes. It's honestly the closest you can get to like a glossy, almost like wet looking lid without using a cream or liquid gloss shadow. It has silver kind of metallic duochrome glitters on a clear base on the eyes, especially because it is a very dimethicone texture, meaning that it has a lot of creaminess and slip to it. It just creates this iridescent wet looking effect. This is the prettiest thing I've ever seen. I'll try to flash a look on screen of each of these shades in action in different eye looks so you can see what they look like. But so pretty. It works with everything because it doesn't have a colorful base. It's pretty much just a clear base with silver glitter, so it works with literally any type of transition shade, any type of eye look, and I just love it with my whole soul. ColourPop, because they do release so many things, they do discontinue a lot of really good Super Shock shades. If they ever discontinue Ritz, I will first of all get my license because I don't have one. I know, it's embarrassing, don't make fun of me please. And then drive up to ColourPop headquarters and burn it down. Another one of my favorite options for glittery lid shades would be the Kaja Beauty Bento Trios. They do have the matte trios as well, so you have like 2 matte shades and then one of the shimmery shades, which I think is awesome for creating full eye looks. But if you're just wanting some really, really good lid shades to add to your collection, my favorite is the Orange Blossom Trio. These look like nothing special in the pan, honestly. They just look like basic shimmery eyeshadows. Something about the distribution of the micro glitter within the shimmer of this just makes it so, so special in the eyes, especially again once it catches the light. These have this really insane way of reflecting everything, kind of like a wet looking shimmer on the eyes. They're also a very, very long lasting glittery shade. I feel like a lot of the time I notice the kind of shimmer of my eyeshadow wearing off. Sometimes like glitter fall out on my under eyes. Never happens with this formula. I love the way that these are milled and just, ugh, beautiful. So they do have a little bit more of a base color than the ColourPop Ritz shadow. So this one is clear, whereas these do have a little bit more pigmentation to them. So if you're wanting a little bit more of like an undertone, these are awesome as well. This next one is a favorite that I actually mentioned in the last year's version of this video, but in this year I have found a pretty comparable dupe to it, so I wanted to mention it again. The Dose of Colors Desi and Katie Francation palette has one of my favorite shimmer formulas ever. I think this is one of the most unique eyeshadow formulas. They're shimmers, but they're packed with this really intense micro glitter that doesn't require glitter glue. They show up on the eyes with this really added extra dimension that you wouldn't get from a normal shimmer. This kind of champagne basic shade here called Just a Kiss looks super nondescript in the pan, but again it kind of has this clear base with this champagne glitter all throughout, and it just looks glazed and wet and beautiful on the eyes. So this is still one of my favorite shades. The ColourPop Sweet Talk palette from earlier this year though, this shade here called Side to Side. I've tried to do eye looks with this palette not using Side to Side. I've been unsuccessful so far. Just like Just a Kiss, Side to Side has that nice clear, beautiful glittery base to it. Then it has this beautiful reflect. It does kind of look similar to Ritz over here. I would say this one has a bit more of like a champagne-y gold pinkish type shade, whereas Ritz is pure silver. Wet eyelids, that's the name of the game here. One of my favorite palette releases from this year, the ABH Jackie Aina palette. This, honestly, I feel like the color scheme in here is put together so well. I do love quite a few of the shades in here. Pinker almost made it into its own special category in this video, but I wanted to mention this palette because of this shade here, Zam. I love the shade despite the fact that I sound stupid saying its name. And unlike some of the other like glittery top coats I'm mentioning in this category, this one does have a bit of a darker base to it, so it would definitely was geared to be a lid shade towards more towards people with a darker complexion, which I love. This is just so beautiful. On me, it does pull to the copper side, but it has a little bit of like a rose gold pink shade to it as well. So I would define it more of like a true rose gold. Either way. Sorry. One of my favorite shades to work with. I would love to see Anastasia do more shades in this type of formula. It kind of reminds me of a very amped up version of the shimmers in the Norvina palette, which were already like very, very hyper beautiful. But like within this palette itself, there are so many different formulas. I love the kind of just like straight up shimmers, the duochrome flips you've got in here. Yeah, I just think this is one of the best palettes of the year. So, but like, you saw what happened. Close out this category of neutral lid shades, the Huda Beauty New Nude palette. This palette was very hyped up when it first launched because of these like white speckled glitter shades in here. White flecks in there give them, again, kind of like the Desi Katy palette, just a little bit of extra dimension on the eyes that helps it like pick up the light in a very, very unique way. I always get questions about what I'm wearing on my eyes when I have any of these lid shades on because they just, they hit different. They hit different. There are so many beautiful shades in here. Of course, my favorite is the most basic shimmer shade in the palette, which is Crave. But those like white flecks in there truly pick up and create like the brightest, most beautiful lid shade. I especially love this one. Actually, any of these shades are best applied with a finger. I just feel like that's the best way to get like the kind of natural oils of your finger, the dimethicone and the glitter particles mixed throughout to just reflect the most on your eyes. So those are my favorite like neutral lid shades, I suppose, with a twist, just like an extra effect. That's what I'm gonna name this category. I was just gonna call them pretty glittery things, but you know, yeah, that's a more cohesive name. The next category I have are like my favorite reddish shades. Starting off with obviously what I'm wearing on my eyes right now, the Mazzucato palette, home to my favorite matte true red in my collection, which is right here, Mexicana. In today's eye look, I'm wearing Mexicana all up in the crease. I have Pan Dulce kind of set out around the edges, Alegria all over my eyelids, and then chocolate. They really, chocolate, that's in English, okay. Chocolate on the kind of like very, very outer corner. Matte reds are one of the hardest shades to get right, in my opinion. I'm also allergic to like a good 75% of them. I was kind of scared to try this one out. I feel like just a lot of brands really shy away from creating a true like fire engine matte red like this. Most of them do like kind of more on the burgundy side with a little bit of brown mixed in there just to get it to a little bit more of a manageable shade to formulate. But of course, Melt does not play around. And this shade just gives me everything I want and more. Also one of the few matte red shades that doesn't go patchy on me, and it's so fun and easy and beautiful to work with. It also just fades so nicely into the other shades in here. Like when I was blending it out with Pan Dulce, I loved that it did that nice seamless subtle blend, but the red didn't disappear and become orange. It still like looks like red on the eyes. Honorable mention to Agua Ardiente. This was my favorite shade when I reviewed this palette, just because this works so beautifully as a versatile shade. It can either pull to the green side if you use it with the green shades up here, or pull to the brown side if you use it with the brown shades down here, or more neutral shades. I love kind of shapeshifter shades like this that really like pull different and look different on the eyes depending on what you pair with it. Oh, that's so beautiful. The Anastasia Beverly Hills Soft Glam palette, one of the few palettes in my collection where it's honestly perfect. Like I wouldn't change a single shade in here. I think everything in here plays well, has a purpose, and performs well. I feel like most palettes in my collection are like almost perfect, but then they have that one shade that I like either don't use, I don't feel like jives completely well with the rest of it. This was like laid out and put together in the most beautiful possible way. Mulberry up here is the shade I wanted to talk about. This is such an interesting color. And if like Agua Ardiente, this one can pull to whatever side you want to pair with. So if you use it with like the pinker shades in here, it looks more to be on the reddish side. If you use it with some like the brown shades in here, I feel like this one looks like a very nice deep burgundy brown. One of my favorite deeper red shades in my collection. It's like a nice smooth brownish reddish burgundy shade. It's also very interesting because I never really thought of burgundy as a neutral until I saw this palette, and it just kind of clicked in my head. I was like, oh, that looks perfect. That's like a rich dimensional color that looks so good within the context of a neutral palette, but I wouldn't have thought to pull in a burgundy into my neutral looks until this palette. So yeah, more palettes like this, Anastasia. Less palettes like this.
Wait, oh yes, wait a minute, Mr. Postman. Wait, hey, Mr. Postman.
Baby.
Oh yes, wait a minute, Mr. Postman.
Yes.
Hey, yeah.
The Lunar Beauty Strawberry Dream palette, another one of my big favorites. I actually have two shades I want to mention in this palette. Every time I've worked with this palette, I've just been like consistently blown away by how good it is. This is more on the pinkier side than the reddish side, but I did want to share two shades. First of all, Sunset down here. This was actually the shade that I swatched in Sephora when I first saw this palette. That kind of convinced me to buy it. And normally I don't base purchases around swatches, but In the pan, I think it works particularly well with the rest of the palette, but this is such a fun, unique shade in my collection. I have plenty of pinks and plenty of reds. This just kind of straddles the line right between them. And for like a deeper but vibrant pink like this blends like nothing I've ever seen before. I also just really like the shimmers in his palettes a lot. I think this and the Moonspell palette have some of my favorite shimmers in that they, again, kind of like the Huda Beauty palettes, they have these little interspersed within the main color of the shade. They also have these little dimensional glitter particles that pick up on different, like, that can kind of give like an almost rainbow effect, like just some iridescence to the shimmer shade. Ruby Skies,
Stop it. Get some help.
Beautiful, beautiful. Granted, it's not hard to formulate shimmer shades, but again, I think that extra added dimension in the shade just makes it particularly special in the eyes. And this is just a good, fun, amazing palette to work with. This is what kind of like just got me back into loving pinks on my eyes again. Then a bit more on the grungy side, another one of my favorite indie brand palettes. This is the Sosu and Kaylee MUA palette. Urban Bible, I think, is a very appropriate name for this palette because it's all over the place. And even though this palette is kind of a mishmash of different shades, I think they work together beautifully, and it's so easy to like look at this one and get inspired for me. So my favorite shade is this really interesting burgundy shade up here called Unruly. In the palette, it looks like just a nice deep red burgundy shade, but this one is such a unique formulation, and Kaylee particularly worked with Sosu to make it this way. When you apply it, you can get this nice, rich, deep red shade, but then as you blend it out, the edges kind of turn pink on the outside. So you get this really nice, interesting color distinction where as you blend it on the eyes, it gives you that nice natural diffusion, that kind of like look you would get if you used multiple eyeshadows to create this nice blended look, but you're really only using one because the edges turn pink, the inside stays that nice deep red, it doesn't lose its shade, and as a result you just get this beautiful diffusion with just one shade. So those are my favorites of this kind of reds and pinks category. I love red eyeshadow, and I think these all do something unique and something different, and they're all just really good. My favorites, the purplish bluish category. One of my favorite brand discoveries from the year, Kaleidos Makeup. This is the Futurism 3 Astro Pink. Honestly, my favorite Futurism palette. I know this is not everyone's favorite, but for me, I feel like this takes a really interesting new take on cool tones. And of the 3 permanent Futurism palettes, this one inspires me the most. Honestly, I love every shade in here, and I think they're all amazing. But this purple shade in here, I don't have the shade name slip anymore, but this purple shade here. So pretty. Not the best swatch I've ever done, but still I think this performs beautifully for what it is, which is one of the hardest shades to formulate. This has, again, that kind of depth of a nice deep plummy shade. Works so well within the context of a cool tone palette. I think it pairs beautifully with the other shades in here, and I find myself reaching for this when I want a good purple shade like this. Even when I'm using other palettes, I'll be like, you know what, I really want to use that Kaleidos purple. So I really like the shade a lot here. Sugar Pill Fun Size palette. This honestly has some of my favorite pastel shades in here. I've spent such a long time trying to find some really good pastel colors. Of course, because this is a purplish / bluish category, my favorite shade is 8-Bit, which is a cross between a purple and a blue. Perfect amalgamation of a cornflower shade that I don't have anywhere else. Hope this swatches well. Usually these types of purple shades and Sugar Pill shadows in general, yeah, see, Sugar Pill's eyeshadows do not swatch well at all. They are a bit of a drier matte formula, so they don't have that kind of dimethicone texture to them that allows you to create these really like smooth concentrated swatches, but they perform beautifully on the eyes, and I've really enjoyed working with the shade here. Honorable mention as well, the Cheat Code. Really hard for me to find like Tiffany blue shades in my collection that really work well, especially with a more pastel base. These I feel like are pastels that don't rely super heavily on a very stark white base, which can make them very chalky. So because of that, these have a little bit more of that like pure pigmentation and less of like that powdery chalkiness that it makes me hate so many pastel shades. Super love the top 2 rows in particular. This is a palette from my friend Amy Loves Makeup and the brand Amy Hearts Beauty, AMI Hearts Beauty. I'm not really sure how to pronounce the brand, but all I know is that this palette is everything I've ever wanted. Honestly, I'm mad that I didn't create this palette because it's beautiful, and she did such a great job with this. I want to mention 2 shades in here in particular. The first is Spirit. I know I was just talking about how I don't really have a lot of cornflower blue shades in my collection. This one I feel pulls a little bit more to the purple side than the blue than 8-Bit over here. It also is a little bit more on the powdery side, so as a result, you do get a very strong color deposition and swatch there. This is a more powdery formula, so I would be cautioned, especially if you are a beginner. You even might want to do your eyes first with this palette just because they are a little bit more powdery, but personally it doesn't really bother me because the color payoff you get is so intensely beautiful for shades that are typically really difficult to formulate. So while I did have a few problems with the lavender shade in here, I feel like the blue matte shades in here just work so beautifully. I also want to talk about the shade over here called Lover. This, such a unique blue shimmer shade. I'll just swatch it like right here. It's blue, got a little bit of like a purple hint in there as well, but it also has a silvery undertone to it, and I think that's the silver like glitter coming through. All of these shimmer shades have a little bit of like that kind of iridescent quality to them, where they just like pick up the light in a different way. So I love wearing these, especially like mixing together the shimmer shades in here. So good. Couldn't mention my favorite bluish purple shades without mentioning the Nabla Soul Blooming palette. This, I'm so glad I was practically bullied by you guys into buying this one. I thought I wasn't gonna buy it because Jay Kissa didn't like it, and then y'all were like, no, get it. Now I have the shade here called Flowery in my life, so it's all worth it. This is like a periwinkle bluish lavender type shade. So interesting, so unique. A lot of brands don't even like attempt to make these types of shades. Nabla just goes and kills it like that. I feel like a lot of the time with like lavenders and baby blues, you can put them on the eyes, they'll look pretty for a second, and then they just blend away. Like you move your brush the wrong way and they're gone basically. And I love that it's a little bit more subdued. It's not trying to be a bright shade. Honestly, I love all the shades in here. I think again, kind of like the Soft Blend palette, this is a palette where I wouldn't change a single shade, but like Flowery, that's something else. I also have three kind of purplish bluish singles that I wanted to mention. I've tried to stop buying single shadows unless they're like very special duochromes like these, just because I don't really tend to use single shadows. Two of these are duochromes from ColourPop. Earthshine, I used this one in a Get Ready With Me recently. It's a little bit of like a purple, it's got a little bit of like a purple shift to it, but it's also kind of on the pinky side. And then Glass Bowl, this is a very interesting, it's got like a green, brown, and blue duochrome shift. Two of the most unique eyeshadow shades in my collection. So I'm going to swatch Earthshine right here so you can see that one's a little bit more on the subtle side, but I feel like this one works really well with like bluish purple eyeshadow looks. So it looks subtle on the eyes, but if someone gets close to you and they're like, oh, that's a really interesting thing you did, like what is that? It adds that little extra something. And then Glass Bowl, this one's a lot less subtle, more on the metallic side, has a bit of a green and bluish brown shift to it. And then on the darker side, I don't buy a lot of like expensive singles just because again, I don't use them very often. But this is a shade that I just knew I had to have. This is Anastasia Beverly Hills Enchanted, marketed as a purple shimmer shade with a blue-black duochrome flip. It's perfection. This does have a bit of a black base to it, but I think it works really well on the outer corner of like purple eyeshadow looks I like to do. It honestly kind of reminds me of like a less chunky version of the Nabla Delirium shade, which is like one of my favorite colors in my collection, but it's such a not great formula. Like, it's really chunky, it creates a lot of fallout everywhere. This gives me that same effect in that same shade, but it's so much of a better formula, honestly. I've never like ragged on Nabla's formula before. I feel dirty. Right, so this last category did not have enough things to make an entire category, so it's just a disunified group of eyeshadow colors I really enjoy. Starting with the Lunar Beauty Moonspell palette. Very interesting colors going on in here. Honestly, at first glance, it can be a little bit overwhelming just because you have the whole like purple thing going on, and then the middle row is kind of like on the more neutral side, then you have like blues and greens, and it's just like, what? By far my favorite shade though is the shade here called Marnie. It is an olive green, very much on the cool tone side. One of the few olive greens in my collection that doesn't have a bit of like a brownish undertone to it. It's like a nice true mossy green, and I love doing like a good monochromatic olive green all over blended look, but it is such a pretty shade. I think Manny's matte formula is just insanely beautiful as well. Yeah, this is a brand that I'm definitely looking out for in 2019. I cannot wait to see what they do because just the general aesthetic of their products I feel like really vibes with me. The formula is awesome, and I can just tell that there's a lot of like thought and care that goes into these palettes themselves, and like the fact that this has like stripes on it to make it look like actual pages, that's so cool. So yeah, switching hour. Goddess Palette by Alter Ego has some of my favorite duochrome shades in here. Obviously it's a dupe of the Natasha Denona Gold, but I think this is better than Natasha's formula anyways, so Favorite shade in this palette is smack dab in the center. It's this kind of green, gold, teal duochrome shift. Valkyrie, it's ridiculously metallic, so beautiful. I think this palette itself takes a really interesting take on golds. It looks like a gold in the pan, but then it has this like really interesting green kind of quality to it. This is just an overall very excellent formula. I also really like the teal blue shade in here called Gaia. Very hard to find deeper teal shades like this that still blend really well and look awesome in the eyes, and they did a great job with this. So really enjoy that shade. And then Alter Ego's newest palette, Aurora, one of my favorite new palettes I've been playing with. This is a dupe of the Natasha Denona Sunrise? I don't know. The new palette that they came out with this year. That was a little bit cheaper than the regular palettes, but still too damn expensive for me. So I want to talk about the shade down here called Soul, because it has this perfect tiny amount of yellow in it where it looks like the honey on Winnie the Pooh, which I honestly thought looked so delicious. I hate the actual taste of honey, but the honey in Winnie the Pooh looks so appetizing because I've realized it looks like cheese sauce, and that's delicious. Yeah, you've got this like Velveeta orange shade down here killing the game, and it's so pretty. This is really beautiful in the crease, especially paired with Sunburst, which is a bit more on like the mustardy yellow side. You get this really just beautiful sunset effect. While we're on the topic of excellent yellows, the Aha Honey palette from ColourPop. Ugh. I love pretty much all the shades in here, even the pressed glitter. Sometimes I'm like, you're annoying, but sometimes I'm like, you're okay. And two shades I want to mention in here. Number one, my favorite true matte yellow in my collection, Sweet Spot up here. I actually don't like ColourPop's matte yellow single, so I was really surprised that this shade worked for me so well. Pretty sure it's probably gonna swatch really badly though. Yeah, does not swatch well. Yellows rarely ever swatch well, but like on the eyes, it's bright, it's beautiful, it shows up really well, it doesn't fade away, which is a problem I find with a lot of yellow shades. A shade I didn't expect to like, but actually became this very unique thing in my collection is the shade here called Buzzkill. This is yellow without being yellow. It looks brown in the pan, but it still retains that yellow shade, and I think this is the best possible color that they could have included within this palette to keep it completely monochromatic in yellow without adding a brown in there, but still you're able to add some extra dimension to your eyes. So, okay, this looks like shit, honestly. It really does look like poop. Like on the eyes, it adds this little extra depth to a fully yellow eye look without taking away from the yellowness of it. You really thought I could go through an eyeshadow video without mentioning the love of my life? The Melt Gemini palette, which I've been loving on, especially as I've been embracing the more neutral side of things. So again, I have two shades I want to mention. Number one, Lorelei, this kind of mustardy yellow, pukey brown beautifulness. So pretty in the crease as a transition shade because, yes, it is kind of more on the brownish side. It has that little extra tinge of yellowness to it, like mustardy yellowness, so it still looks unique and it looks different. Also, the formula of Melt's eyeshadows, especially their mattes, is just something else. And then my favorite matte black in my collection, Bonnie, right here. I want this in a single because it is perfection. Just so dense, rich, non-patchy. It's like, oh, I get way too excited about that, but okay, yeah, best matte black in the world. Juvia's Place Masquerade Mini Palette. This, of course my favorite shade in this palette is the most neutral one, but it's anything but that because it's so perfect. Casablanca down here, nice copper shimmer shade. Looks like nothing special, honestly. On the finger, okay, it's shimmery, but, and I'm gonna do it over my temporary tattoo so you can just see how much it like covers. I want to know what kind of crack they were smoking at Juvia's Place when they made this shadow, because somebody added too much dimethicone and made it just too damn perfect. And it's also one of the few like copper shimmer shades in my collection that isn't too orange for me to wear on a daily basis. I feel like a lot of copper shimmer shades pull way too much to the orange side. This one's just perfectly brown, perfectly beige, but anything but boring, and that's my whole life. This little Tarte Finger Paints foil palette, would not have noticed it in any other way, but I saw the silver shade in here and I was like, you know what? Let me just swatch that. It just like, oh, this has really filled a void and also just got me excited about using silver shades because I definitely am more of a person on the warm tone side. It does that, so yeah. Alright guys, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, just talking about my favorite eyeshadow shades in my collection. There were a lot of them, but yeah, they're all unique, they all have something special, they all have that extra oomph quality to them. So, hope you guys enjoyed this one. There are only a few videos left in 2019. This was one of the last ones. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed down below and also follow me on Instagram to see makeup looks like this posted sometimes. And if you made it to the very end of this video, you beautiful rule-breaking moths, you get the bonus meme. Love you. Bye. This is so dirty. I'm so sorry.
Check, family, friends, school, Jesus, lifestyle, mind.